In this video, we're going to take a brief look at a very common resident of parks, gardens, forests, and wetlands. They like to come out when it's particularly humid or damp, moving slowly from point A to point B. Can you guess who it is? A garden snail. Snails can be found in many parts of the world, including the United States, and definitely at Randall's Island. Snails are very interesting creatures. The first thing you'd probably notice about a snail is its shell. Snails are part of a group of animals called invertebrates, which are animals without any backbone. There are a few different kinds of snails as well. Land snails that live on land, marine snails that live in the ocean, and freshwater snails that live in rivers, lakes, and streams. The garden snail is a kind of land snail, which means they have a lung to breathe air. Snails are part of a large group of animals called gastropods. Gastropods include animals like snails, slugs, and whelks. These animals have soft bodies and use a special part of their body, called a foot, to move. Now, what is a snail's foot? A snail's foot is not like your foot or my foot. Snails can move their bodies in and out of their shells. When their body is extended out of the shell, they flatten and form a sole or a foot. Then they ripple their muscles to start to crawl. Snails move slowly because they use up a lot of energy when they move. You'll also notice that as a snail crawls along, it leaves behind a trail of slime. That slime is called mucus. Mucus is kind of like when you have a runny nose. It's slimy and it prevents your nose, or in this case, snails, from drying out. A snail will secrete or ooze out the mucus. Every time a snail wants to move, they secrete this mucus, which uses a lot of energy and water from their tiny bodies. This is why they move slowly. But that clearly doesn't bother the snail. Its mucus helps reduce the amount of friction between their soft body and rough surfaces like rocks or sand. It also allows snails to crawl up trees and even upside down. Snails can crawl nearly anywhere on many different surfaces because they produce mucus. Another part of their body that you notice is their two pairs of tentacles. The longer tentacles, called eye stalks, are where their eyes are located. You can tell where their eyes are because they're tiny black dots. However, snails rely on their other senses more than sight. The smaller pair of tentacles are used to feel, smell, and taste their environment. Now, I've only mentioned 4 of the 5 senses, and that's because snails do not have the ability to hear. They rely on their other senses to help them survive, and they do so just fine without hearing. Snails have evolved over time to have a shell. Their shell is there to protect the snail from predators, the elements like the wind and the hot sun, and to keep in moisture so the snail does not dry out. Different patterns on the shell also provide camouflage for the snail. Can you spot the snail in this photo? A snail's shell is permanently attached to their bodies. It can't be removed like a hermit crab. It's made up of several layers of a material called calcium carbonate, the same material that eggshells, clamshells, coral, and limestone are made out of. This helps the snail's shell stay strong and thick to protect the snail. Snails hatch from an egg. When the garden snail first emerges, it's so small, it's barely the size of a pencil eraser, and its shell is incredibly weak and transparent, leaving the snail completely defenseless. To start hardening its shell, the first meal a snail will eat is its own egg, because it's rich in calcium. The baby snail will hide for most of its young life to concentrate on eating, growing, and hardening its shell. Like we've learned before, there are thousands of different kinds of snails. They can grow to as small as the eye hole of a needle, or even as big as a cantaloupe. The garden snail can grow to be about an inch long, or about the size of a US quarter. A garden snail will emerge into adulthood anywhere between 6 to 10 months. In the wild, these snails can live up to 2 years. These snails are most active during the night, early mornings, but will come out in the daytime when it's especially humid or raining. A snail is both male and female. When it's time to have new snail babies, two individual snails will come together and both will lay eggs. Snails will lay anywhere between 50 and 80 eggs at a time. A snail's eggs are tasty snacks for other animals, like some fish or beetles. So, by laying so many eggs, this increases the chances that one egg will not be eaten, live into adulthood, and continue the life cycle, contributing to its ecosystem. Garden snails are herbaceous animals, which means they feed mainly on plants and parts of plants. They will eat fruits, vegetables, leaves, tree bark, even flowers. Because they eat all these things, they can be seen as unwanted pests in people's gardens. To feed, a snail will use its radula. A radula is a tongue-like organ that has thousands of microscopic teeth. The snail uses the radula like a file to scrape its food off and eat it. The radula is within the mouth of the snail. In their proper environment, garden snails have a very important niche, or role, in their ecosystem. Aside from plants, snails will also eat decomposing organic material. In science, the word organic means anything that is or was alive. Snails eat things like dead leaves, leaf litter, rotting fruits, logs, tree stumps, and even occasionally a dead animal. Snails will also eat mushrooms and other fungi too. All these organic materials have lots of nutrients for the snail to eat in order to grow and, of course, harden its shell. While eating these dead organic materials, they break down the nutrients, recycle them, and put the nutrients back into the soil for other living things to use. Snails are also an important source of food for many other animals as well, like birds, insects, reptiles, mammals, fish, and crabs. Not only is their body tasty, but their shell also has calcium and minerals that other animals can use. Even humans consume snails as a treat. Have you ever heard of escargot? Snails are unique animals that have made their home here at Randall's Island. In addition to the garden snail, we have over a dozen other species of snails that can be found both on land and in the water. You can observe and learn about these charismatic, slimy critters at Randall's Island during one of our educational environmental events. Be sure to check us out online for more educational and fun content. Once again, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.